Okay guys, out this morning on a 2016 Ducati Multistrada Enduro. Currently on an old tar and chip road. Just tar and chip not too long ago. Still a lot of loose gravel on it. Figured we'll try out these off-road tires a little bit. Big thank you to the guys up at Duc Pond Motosports, also known as Winchester Ducati, your authorized Ducati dealer in Winchester, Virginia, for loaning me out this bike. I picked it up last night, got to ride it around a little bit, test some things out. And today I'm going to give you guys a full review on my thoughts and capabilities of the Ducati Multistrada Enduro. Let's go ahead and start with some of the specs. This Ducati Multistrada Enduro shares the same engine as the other Multistrada line, the 1198cc twin, putting out 160 horsepower and 100 foot-pounds of torque. Plenty of power for an adventure bike. With a 6-speed transmission and a chain final drive, it shares the same power and drivetrain as the other Multistrada line. So what separates the Enduro from the other Multistradas? Well, quite a few things actually. First off, you've got a 7.9 gallon tank, which is going to allow you to go pretty far between fill-ups. Speaking of 7.9, you also have 7.9 inches of suspension travel on both the front and rear, giving you plenty of travel and clearance for when you take this big beast off-road. One of the biggest knocks on the regular Multistradas and their off-road capabilities was the fact that they came with a 17-inch wheel front and back. That is no longer the case on the Enduro. The Enduro, while it does have a 17-inch wheel on the back, you're looking at a 19-inch wheel on the front, which is going to make it a whole lot easier going off-road. Speaking of wheels, much different style wheel on this bike. It does have wired spoke rims, but they are outboard spokes, meaning you can run a tubeless tire. And we'll get a close-up of it. The spokes are actually outboard. They're not inboard like they are on many other dirt bikes and some other adventure bikes. Okay, on the topic of suspension, like most other bikes in its price range in the adventure touring class, the Multistrada Enduro also has an electronic suspension on it, which can be controlled through your different drive modes or your different ride modes, which I'll get into in just a minute. By the way, the suspension on this thing is fabulous. When it comes to suspension baseline, you've got it set up for one rider plus bags, two people or two people plus bags. That gets you your baseline set up, and then you can fine tune it with the electronics from there. One thing you're going to notice that's different about this Multistrada as compared to other models, it does have a dual-sided swing arm as opposed to a single-sided swing arm that a lot of Ducati sport bikes have had currently and in the past. Which is just good for durability off-road. This Enduro model also comes with a massive bash plate on the bottom of it. Big old piece of metal to protect your engine and other vital parts of the bike when you're going off-road. I find that gives me a lot of confidence when you're off-road, that you don't have to worry about bottoming out or hurting anything because you do have something there to keep that engine protected. Now, when you first sit on this bike, probably what you may notice, either first or second, first off, there's no key. I do have the key. It's a key fob. It's in my pocket. There is an actual key on it, which is used to lock and unlock the bags. But you don't need the key to start the bike. You just need to have it on you. If you don't notice that first, then chances are you're going to notice the TFT display, which is pretty slick. On there, you've got tons of information, which, depending on how you feel about it, you may love or you may find slightly overwhelming. I'll be honest, when I first looked at it, I found it a little overwhelming. But you'll catch on pretty quick and start to actually like it. You obviously have a digital tachometer, and depending on what ride mode you're in, the tachometer will look different. I'm going to cut over to a screen right now to show you what I mean. I want you to take a quick look at the tach right now. That is currently in touring mode. In just a second, I'm going to flip it over to sport mode, and I want you to take a look at the tach there. Now, if you take a look at the tach, you can see it's a totally different layout when we're over in sport mode. Just found that interesting. Now, you obviously have a really big display there for your speed, and you have a rather large gear indicator right there. Other information you're going to find on your TFT display is pretty standard stuff. You have your trip odometers, you have your outside air temperature, you have your engine temperature, odometer, fuel gauge, Bluetooth little thing right up there, and then you also have what level that your heated grips are currently turned on, which you can see mine are on medium right now. You can see it looks like a little cell phone. There's some headphones down here and a little Bluetooth signal. you can actually integrate whatever headset, whatever Bluetooth headset or headsets, if you're riding with a passenger, are using, as well as your cell phone and or GPS. You can run it all through this TFT display, which is pretty cool. We're seeing some other manufacturers start to do that now. This is the first bike I've ridden with it on there. I obviously haven't set mine up to it since I'm just borrowing this bike for a couple of days, but still a really cool feature. So from the cockpit, a few other things you're going to notice. You've got all your buttons over here on the left side. You can easily get to the menu button to change your different settings on your display. You also have cruise control, which works really, really well, which I'll show you in a minute. Currently out on the interstate doing about 72 miles an hour. Looks like it's tacking about 4,500 RPMs. We've got the cruise on. Cruise works extremely well. And this windshield in the highest position cuts a really nice hole in the air. I've got no buffeting. It's low 40s out right now. And while I do have the grips on, the rest of me staying pretty warm. Not getting a whole lot of wind back here, which is great if you're going to be using this bike for touring purposes. You got your horn. You've got, much like the KTM has, you have the ability to flash your headlights and then just flick that thing out and it turns on your high beam. Over here on this side, you do have the heated grip button, as well as your starter, kill switch, and just normal amenities. Something else that's kind of interesting I've seen on cars before, but it's the first time I've seen it on a motorcycle, where you have these buttons over here on this side and also over on this side that are backlit. Now unfortunately you can't actually see what's written on them, but you can see the button themselves, so if you know what they are, you ought to be able to find them pretty quickly. Now I will say this for this bike, it has great rear visibility. These mirrors are really large and easy to see out of, no vibration or anything like that. The only thing is they're right out and maybe just a tad bit past the end of your handlebars, which if you're riding on roads, probably not that big a deal. If you're going to do much off-road, you might have to be careful with the mirrors since they do extend out pretty far. Another thing which is pretty much standard on bikes like these are big fat hand guards. You've got great hand guards on this bike. These hand guards do have the turn signals integrated into them. You also have a windshield, which is single hand adjustable. That's the high position, that's the low position. Really, really easy to move this thing. No need for any tools or to carry anything extra in order to adjust your windshield. You also don't need to pull over. You can obviously do it on the fly, just like I did. When you first sit down on the bike, you're going to notice you got a pretty plush seat, pretty wide. It's obviously narrow toward the fuel tank to make it a little bit easier to get your feet down, but where your rear is going to go, you've got plenty of cushioning. Now once you take off down the road on this bike, something I noticed that's totally different than riding my KTM is I feel like I'm sitting down in the bike a little bit more. And for on-road purposes, I think that's great. I really feel like I'm on a sport bike. Off-road, I don't know. It's not really a positive or negative. And once you hit that starter button, you're going to hear this big 1200cc engine fire up. First thing I noticed is how loud it was. Not loud like Superbike loud, but compared to my 1290 Super Adventure, a little bit throatier, a little bit louder. Also noticed got a little bit more engine vibration out of it than I do with my KTM. However, once you get out on the road and you really start getting into the throttle on this thing and start downshifting, hearing that exhaust note on this Multistrada Enduro becomes just a tad bit addicting. Now this Multistrada Enduro does have a really comfortable neutral riding position on it. You're going to be sitting upright. Your feet are going to be pretty much right under you. You can tell my hands are in a pretty high position on this handlebar, really comfortable position. Now speaking of seat height, this is an adjustable seat. There are two different seat heights for it, which I'll pop up right here. And if those are still too tall for you, Ducati does offer another seat that you can get that's going to lower it just a little bit more. That said, because the seat has been narrowed, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the seat height at the moment. You really ought to sit on one and try it out for yourself. At 5'10" and a 32-inch inseam, even with this bike in sport mode, I could still put both feet down really, really comfortably. Now you may have wondered why I just mentioned sport mode. Well, because you have 4 different ride modes. You have sport, touring, urban, and enduro. Let me walk you through those real quick. I've got it in touring mode right now. Sport mode is your most aggressive. You get maximum horsepower, you get maximum throttle response, you get the stiffest suspension settings. That's really the mode you want to put it in when you really want to go out and ride fast. That's the one. Touring mode is a little bit more laid back. The throttle response isn't quite as abrupt. Suspension's a little bit softer, but still really, really compliant. And on roads where maybe they aren't the best paved, that's the mode I like to have it in because it soaks up the bumps really well, but still holds your line. Now, Enduro mode, to be honest, I don't have much use for Enduro mode. That cuts your power down from 160 to 100 horsepower. It changes some of the other settings as well. That one I don't see me using much. However, off-road mode is great. That also cuts your power, but that gives you the best and probably the softest suspension settings to take it off-road. It also cuts off the ABS to the rear wheel, allowing you to lock up the rear wheel if you want off-road. Unlike my KTM, where the suspension adjustment is separate from the drive mode, on the Ducati, they're all the same. I don't want to say they're all the same. They're tied in together. That said, you don't have to stick with the factory settings. You can make all sorts of adjustments. So I think if this bike were, were mine, maybe I'd just pick one of them and go in, and that would be like the Mario setting, and that's where I would have everything the way I want it for most riding conditions. But when I talk about being able to make adjustments, here's exactly what I'm talking about. You can set up, the engine response or engine power, how much of it you want on tap. You can set up the traction control for how you want it. You can set up the ABS how you want it. You can set up the wheelie control, and then you can also set up the suspension on it for how soft or how hard you can adjust the preload and everything else. There are a million adjustments on this bike. So while I say it has 4 different ride modes on it, that's just 4 factory preset. I haven't done the math on it, but I got to think there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different combinations that you could set that up in to get it fine-tuned for you and your riding style. This bike comes outfitted with Pirelli Scorpions, which are an on-off-road tire. I can tell you they are very, very compliant on-road, and they handle well. Off-road, also a very good tire. Took them off-road a little bit yesterday on some gravel and some dirt roads, also on some tar and chip roads with a lot of gravel on it. Also took it off-road this morning on some wet grass, some hard-packed dirt, a little bit of mud. Did really, really well. I'm sure there are better off-road tires available for it, but if you're looking to do a little bit of on and off-road, I think you'll be pretty happy with these Pirelli Scorpions. In terms of brakes on this bike, you have radial mount Brembos on the front. I believe they're 320 millimeter. I can't remember on the back. I want to say it's a 260 millimeter. It is bigger than the standard Multistrada rear brake, which obviously you want for off-road purposes because you're not going to be using much front brake off-road, and if you are, you're probably going to end up in the dirt. So excellent brakes from this bike. They do extremely well on the road. Now, one of the major positives of this bike is the saddlebags. This thing has excellent saddlebags on them. And while you first take a look at them and they say Ducati on the side, you'll soon realize that even though they have the Ducati name on there, they are made specially for them. They're actually made by Touratech. And these are all aluminum bags, and you've got the brackets to hold them on there. They are key matched, and you can lock the bags, you can lock them on the bike, or you can unlock them from the bike and take them into your hotel room if you want. I'm 99% sure there are bag liners available for them. One of the things I like about them is you can open them tilted to the front, you can open them tilted to the back, or you can undo both latches and just take the lid totally off. There is a nice little safety wire there in between that'll keep it tied onto the bag, or if you want to, you can take that thing off and you can totally remove the top, and which obviously by looking at the video you can tell that they are top load bags, which really makes them easy to load and unload. Currently have Kristen on the back. In just a second we'll find out what she had to say about the comfort and the ride from a passenger standpoint. I can tell you that from my standpoint, I've got it in 2-up mode, and from the factory setting it does a really good job. The suspension is not springy or anything. It's really soaking up the bumps just as well with her on the back. I've got no extra front end dive. It doesn't feel squatty or anything. It's really, really good in 2-up mode with a passenger on the back.
All right, just got back on a quick ride with Kristen on the back. Do not read anything into the Ducati sweatshirt. Does not mean I'm buying another bike. Anyway, let's just start with a couple of quick things. How's the seat?
It's pretty comfortable. It's got a wide setting and it's padding.
All right, how's the leg room?
Legroom's good position. You don't hit the bags on the back. Don't really care for the foot pegs though. It's a little difficult to get up onto, and they're slightly smaller than what I'm used to.
How's the ride?
The ride was fine. It was comparable to what I feel like on the back of the KTM. A little noisy.
How's the wind buffeting?
That I did notice a bit more. The wind coming off. It's a little heavier than what I'm used to as well.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I think overall, long distance, you'd probably be pretty comfortable sitting up here in the back.
So as you'd expect with a Ducati, great power. To be a little more specific about the power on this bike, makes plenty of horsepower up high, but down low, it's got the torque of an old tractor. I mean, this thing will just pull. Great handling, great brakes, really cool exhaust note, but it can't be perfect at everything. So if there were a couple things that I would like to fix about the bike, what would it be? Well, first off, I mentioned the seat was really comfortable when I first sat on it, but after spending about an hour in it, I wish it was a little bit firmer. Let's just say my backside starting to get a little sore. One thing that I'm not sure if it needs change, but I would kind of like to see it change just to feel a little bit better. I don't know that I trust the durability of the turn signals integrated into the handguards. I just feel like that's a weakness of the bike that maybe you could have put some stalks on or maybe integrated them into the front fairing in some way. I just feel like having them out on the handguard puts them out there and a little more susceptible to damage. I feel like I could use just a little bit more leg room. My legs are a little bit more cramped up than they are on my current bike, but still a really comfortable riding position. Now, if I'm nitpicking, there is another negative, and it's just a small thing. While I'm ecstatic that the Ducati comes with a bash plate on the bottom, unlike my 1290 Super Adventure, I wish it would have had some sort of crash bars or crash protection up here for the fairing. Now, just like my KTM where I can order a bash plate for it, Ducati, you can order the crash protection for the fairing. I wish both manufacturers would just have both of those pieces standard on the bikes though. If there was one more big negative I would point out on this motorcycle, it's that unfortunately I have to take it back. They're not going to let me keep it. But in all seriousness, big thank you to Winchester Ducati. If you're in the Winchester, Virginia area, really northern Virginia, DC area, and you want to check out a great showroom of Ducatis, check out Winchester Ducati. Big thank you to you guys for letting me borrow this bike for a couple days and really put it through its paces to see what it could do. Give Pete a call up there, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have about the whole Ducati lineup. I hope you guys enjoyed today's review video and got some good information from it. If there was something I didn't answer or speak about that you were hoping I would have, go ahead and comment below with your question. I'll be more than happy to try to answer it for you. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please give me a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, I look forward to you being one, as we're going to have some more bike reviews on this channel soon. And I'll talk to you guys again soon.